I'll give you guys a brief introduction of myself. My name is Michael Geyer. I'm the founder, CEO of Exceptional Water Systems, Pure Vision Technologies. We basically specialize in research and development on new technologies, especially ultrafine bubble technology, which is nanotechnology. We diffuse different gases into water, into solution. So this is not just the only industry we service. We do stuff for agriculture, we do stuff for lakes and ponds, we do stuff for oceans, we do stuff for drinking water, we do stuff for the medical industry, all sorts of different things. But the water that we create is number one. We're focused, highly focused on the body of water and the health and wellness of that water. So no matter what we touch, we have a certain level of standards that we go by. Everything we design hits that standard. We do not deviate from our minimum standards, which is high quality water. So what I'm going to do today for you, I'm going to give you a brief overview of systems and so forth, what's most important when we look at designing different types of bodies of water specific to what you're using it for, whether it's a spa, whether it's a pool, whether it's a cold plunge, and then what are the evils we have to choose from. And I say it that way because we don't like chemicals. So a lot of what we do is chemical free, but we do stuff for the residential industry where we don't have to follow politics, I'm going to say. So there's a lot of different things that we can do and improve water quality to the nth degree because we don't have to follow certain guidelines. When we have to follow certain guidelines, we have to be very particular about it because we do want to meet regulations between the county, the state regulations and so forth. We work with them as well, trying to improve these water qualities and so forth and change some of these standards, but it's just it's a time thing. So first off, we first and foremost look at healthy water for humanity in pretty much everything we do. So one of the first things with swimming pools and such is to be successful is to have a proper turnover rate and filtration. That's your first and foremost for any system. That's a foundation of how you build a system, okay? The faster the turnover rate, the better the water quality. And the reason why I say that is a turnover is basically defined as how long does it take the number of gallons in a specific body of water, whether it's a pool, whether it's a spa, it doesn't matter. How long does it take to go through the filtration system in the back, okay? So on average, state of Arizona allows you to have an 8-hour turnover rate, which is horrible. Only 62% of that water actually sees the pump room based on a dissolution factor in that 8-hour time period. So if you were to open your facility at 8 o'clock in the morning, by 4 o'clock in the afternoon, only 62% of the water is actually seeing the pump room, okay? And it's important to understand that right now is because everything moving forward is going to affect everything that you do in the future, okay? The cost of operation. The longer that turnover rate, the higher the cost of operation. People miss that. So designing your pump room in the very beginning and planning for the future is the best thing you can do for your facility, not only now, but for the future, okay? And I'm going to go into that more specifically. So everything that I talk about today is going to tie right back to this here. County code allows for a 30-minute turnover for spas. We have a spa at our facility. There's 0 chemicals in there. We never have, we never will. And we have a 7-minute turnover on it. It's the size of a system you would use on a pool, not on a spa. So it's a whole different animal. Slow turnover rates, you don't get as good of water quality. You are based on bather load. So we're going to talk about that. Very, very important to understand what the body of water is being used for. Faster turnover rates, greater water quality, and lower cost of operation. So we have all sorts of different types of filtration we could choose from. Most common, sand filters. These are actually sand filters, but they actually have glass media. These 2 filters are taller than me, and these are on a spa, okay? Dual filtration. They only have about, glass is probably up to here, And there's a reason why we do that. It gives the backwashing process, which is very important, to give it more freeboard when we backwash and so forth. The media type that we choose from is the best we can use for commercial. That's not the best for residential, and I'll show you a picture. But we have glass, you have DE. I don't recommend DE. I don't like DE for numerous reasons, but that's just my personal. We use cartridge sometimes when you don't have space, because a lot of times you can't fit these types of filters in a closet, and a lot of times, unfortunately, facilities, when they're built, they give you this little tiny closet and go, oh yeah, here's the pump room over here, and you're like, yeah, I need about 10 of those. So nonetheless, we use cartridge when we have to. And then ceramic, creme de la crop, but it doesn't pass NSF code because it's too clean. Doesn't make sense, but it cleans the water too fast. I get it. It doesn't make sense, but that's why, okay? So even the people outside the industry where it really matters, just know, like industrial, when you're looking at drinking water, wastewater management, all these other places that really matter, they can use it, but not in the pool industry because it's too good. So it doesn't make sense. But nonetheless, some of the considerations we're going to look at for your filtration, what's your bather load like? How many people are getting in there each day, each hour? What do those bathers look like? Not physically, but what are they carrying? Lotions, oils, stuff that you have on them that makes a huge difference on what's going to happen to these filters, how it's going to plug up, and so how long it's going to last. What your maintenance cost is going to be. You use DE, you got to replace it every single time you backwash. I don't like that. I'm not about spending more money every time I have to service. You got enough service in your pump room. You want to limit the amount of things that you're going to be spending money on, because as a facility, you guys know how that is. It's constant. It's always constant. What's the space available? Again, how much space do you have for the type of filtration you're going to use? What's the service demand? Do you have the people available to service that on a regular basis? How often is it going to be serviced? Is it going to interrupt your daily operations and so forth? That's really important. A lot of places we do for health and wellness and so forth, swim schools and so forth, they can't have shutdown. If they have shutdown, that means they're losing money, they're losing revenues. If you noticed on here, everything we do is isolated, okay? We can isolate any filter and keep the facility running. We always do that. There is no option in that. We do that specifically for our clientele to make sure that they continue on with their operations. The other thing is backwashing capability. So sometimes they stick you in a back room, in a closet, and there's no drain. There's nowhere to get rid of water. So then guess what? You're stuck with cartridge. If you can backwash and you have the ability, then you can go with something better than cartridge filters. So greater filtration. So when you increase the amount of filtration for any body of water, technically sometimes people say it's adequate. And my question to them is, what do you consider adequate? What's adequate in your book? When you take a raging river, if you look at a raging river, it's pretty cloudy, right? A lot of dirt and debris, muddy and so forth. But if you looked at a creek is crystal clear normally because it's flowing very slow. So when we look at filtration, you're trying to mimic what Mother Nature does. You're slowing down the water. If you wanted a fast flow rate in the system, you have to increase your filtration capacity so that it's going through it very slowly. Rather than going through one filter, you might have 5 filters, okay? Big difference. So now pressures come down, the stress on the system comes down, the stress on your pump that runs 24/7 comes down. You pull out more debris, you use less chlorine, it's cleaning the water faster. There's numerous factors in there that is a snowball effect. So every time you change and you really focus on what's most important, this is key, absolutely key to keeping your water, number one, clean and reducing the amount of chemicals that you're going to use. And I'm going to go into that too. And everything is going to go back to that same thing I was talking about earlier which is turnover rate. So more filtration provides greater particle removal. That's more filters in there. So instead of having one, like in that other case, we go to 2 filters, but we use a filter media rate of 10 or less. And what that means is when I take 1 square foot of filtration area, okay, water comes through there, you have the ability to go anywhere from 5 to 20 gallons per minute through that 1 square foot. If I'm shoving 20 gallons a minute through there, I don't get very good filtration. On average, most places across the country, they design at about 15. We know statistically that if you're less than 10, you get the greatest amount of particle removal. So now the water's barely trickling through there. All the dirt and debris stays on top. Your backwashing is better. Your pressures are better. It lasts longer. You get better water quality. You use less chemicals, etc., etc. So there's a lot of benefits that go from just that one factor there. And then the type of media you're using. Yes, ma'am?
I have a question. So you said that you have a jacuzzi or a spa that filters in 7 minutes. How is that possible if it's slow?
Good question. So it goes back to the filter media rate. So because it's a small body of water and it's only 450 gallons a minute, we have large filtration in the back, and we kicked up the flow rate to about 100, almost 100 gallons a minute. So 450 gallons, how long is it going to take to go through that in that amount of time? About 7 minutes. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So it's speed, and then I have a lot of filtration. So I have almost 10 square foot of filtration, which is a little less than that number. So it's less than, on the filter media rate, it's about 10 or less. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah. Faster water flows, poor filtration, slower water flows, greater filtration. So it's the concept of using more filtration for faster flows, and then as you slow down, but it's all based on a ratio that we use for that. Pre-filtration. Pre-filtration works great. So if you had an outdoor facility, these are really nice. These are something new that came out not too long ago, but great for outdoor bodies of water. So out here, obviously, we get the Habibs that come through, and you get full of dust and so forth. These are going to pull out 80% of that dirt before it goes into your filters. And we try to avoid them going into the filters at all costs, because then it just means you're going to backwash more, it's going to be harder to clean the pool, and so on. But you get longer run times, they're easier to clean. You basically have we designed the manifold for this. This is on a different type of pool, but you just open this valve right here, and it just blows it out into the drain. Takes a couple minutes, and then you actually see all the dirt and debris build up in here, and it just blows out. So they're really nice in that thing, and they're low maintenance. There's really not a whole lot to them. It's a
backwashed as well.
You'll still backwash depending on type of filter. So this can go in front of sand filters, cartridge filters, whatever. It's just a pre-filter. So they work like a Dyson vacuum. It comes in, it kind of just spits all the dirt out, and then it just sits on the bottom. So
is that more of an option, or is recommended to go with your system?
It's just an option. Okay. Strictly an option. This I would recommend doing it if you have an outdoor pool. Sure. If it's an indoor pool, you don't really need that. Yeah. So what's the difference in bather loads between hot tubs and cold plunges? So this is actually kind of nice, because we're dealing with a very large, I'll say a health and wellness facility, and they have numerous facilities around the country, and this guy is the #1 problem, okay? And this is what I want to kind of share with you guys today, is understanding what you should be looking for, what I would recommend looking for when you're wanting to put in a cold plunge. What's the difference between a hot tub? So you already know probably right now, hot tubs are extremely difficult to manage for numerous reasons. You got a lot of people in there. You got a very small amount of water. Hot water actually cleans the body super fast, right? It's peeling off all the oils, any type of organics and that sort of thing. Cold plunges, there's a lot of people, but you're not going to be in there very long. So which means these people sit in here for 30 minutes, these people in probably 3 minutes. But there's going to be another set of people in there for another 3 minutes, and another set for another 3 minutes, and another. So this is going to have almost 10 times as many people as this. So what's that going to do to your filtration? It's going to plug up the filter super fast. So that was one failure on a lot of facilities that put cold plunges in. They're great, don't get me wrong, but every time people get in, all of your clothes, everything else, you get a tremendous amount of organics coming into your filtration. So the filtration needs to be at least twice as much as what you'd have on your spa, just because of the amount of people getting in there. Now, not all facilities are the same. If you're not like a health club and you don't have 20 people coming in at a time, and you're more, I don't know what your facility is like here, how many people come in, but maybe you don't need that because you're not going to have that many people. But keep that in mind. How many people are actually going to be using this cold plunge? Very important to understand. And what do those people look like? Again, very important. How are they getting into that cold plunge? What do they have on there? What are you going to be offering to them? Because that's another problem. So here's some of the things. People in water, hot water systems, they strip your body of organics, the way we clean things, right? Going to take the oils and all that other stuff. Hot water raises the pH levels faster. Hot water, we have aeration because of the spas, which is also going to raise that pH faster. Hot water depletes the chlorine. Chlorine raises pH, and I'm going to go into that too. I'm going to show you specifically different types of chlorines that you're going to choose from and how they're going to affect your pH in the water. Higher pH reduces chlorine's effectiveness. Unfortunately, chlorine is directly tied to the effectiveness of itself with pH. So your pH, when it's at 7.5, you get 50% effectiveness from your chlorine. That's it, okay? And that's the ideal spot. As it goes up, which everything is pushing it up, especially in a hot water facility, as it goes up, your chlorine's effectiveness drops. So if you're fighting organics and all these other things, how effective is your chlorine going to be if your pH is not in place? Okay, very important. And what type of chlorine are you using too? That's also an important thing to understand. So it creates chloramines way faster than pools, just because of the characteristics of the water. You're constantly fighting a lot of different things in there. Higher bather to water ratios, which means you're going to have to change your water super fast. In a pool, dilution. That's normally the solution there. But even over time, number one thing in a swimming pool, when we do backyard swimming pools and so forth, and we use zero chlorine on them, they have to manage TDS levels. So TDS is what they call total dissolved solids. That's anything you're introducing into the water that goes into solution and stays in there. That builds up over time. We bring a lot of that in, people do, okay? And as you get in those waters over time and so forth, I'll get into a little bit more of what else you're going to be introducing in there. People introduce a lot of toxins into the water as well. So those also become the part of that TDS. You probably don't want to know what a lot of the TDS is in your swimming pool, unfortunately, but nonetheless, there's a lot of it. Cold plunge, higher bather to water ratios for sure than a spa due to the short time intervals. Again, because they're getting in there for short periods of time, just 2 minutes, 3 minutes, they're in and out, and you got multiple people getting in there over time. The sweat drops your pH, so it's almost a different deal of what's happening here, but depending on what's happening, so a lot of the modalities out there, a lot of the health and wellness centers, they're offering saunas, they're offering the spas, so people get out, they're sweating, they cool off in the cold plunge. So you got numerous people just dropping in this sweat, so the pH just goes down and down and down, and they have a tremendous hard time of managing that pH because it won't come up. It stays down and it won't come up. Chloramines, because of the greater organic buildup, chlorines build up super fast in those. I mean, just almost immediately because you got a tremendous amount of sweat. Unfortunately, chlorine doesn't do a very good job of oxidizing it and disinfecting that. It does okay, but it's still a major problem with those types of facilities. Creates chloramines faster, and then a greater need for more filtration and faster turnover rates. Again, It's all a number based on how many people are going to be getting in there and what do you perceive your clientele going in this. What are they going to look like when they go into your spa? Okay, that's really important. Chlorine versus salt versus oxygen versus ozone. So obviously we do a lot of natural sanitizers and so forth. So we use oxygen, we use ozone. We also use CO2 to manage the pH because we don't like acid, again, for the corrosive aspects of it and so forth. But I'm going to give you a difference of the different sanitizers, types of secondary disinfectants that you can use. What's the secondary disinfections? Do they create byproducts and so forth that you should be worried about? And then how do you get the best water quality for your patrons? So this is a list of all the evils, as I call them. You have gas chlorine. Gas chlorine, obviously 100% efficient. It's very strong. It creates hypochloric acid and TDS. So unfortunately, it drops your pH when you're using it. It's very dangerous to use. You got to use a lot of safety precautions, and a lot of places are pretty much just banning it. A lot of cities won't even allow you to use it unless you do some major renovations to your facility and keep that in like a separate chamber and everything. Case in point, I don't know if you guys saw recently in Mesa, city of Mesa, they had a chlorine leak. They had gas. They had to evacuate like a quarter-mile area just because they had a leak. And it's at a school too. So I'm like, yeah. So not a good choice. Liquid chlorine, on a good day, you might be at 10%, but it depends on the heat and the sun where it's sitting. It loses its strength super fast. But this is the best you're going to get out of it. And this is highly, almost impossible, especially here in Arizona. So over the weekend, if it was sitting there, you have a tank of chlorine sitting there, it might drop down to 9, 8, 7, but you can actually test it. So if you're ever curious, what's the strength of my chlorine, if you're ever using liquid, you can actually get a test kit and test what the strength is. Chances are it's going to be weak. So as time goes by and it's hot out here in the summer and so forth, you don't use it very fast, you're going to lose its strength really quick. It's going to leave you with TDS and salt left in the water. What's in that TDS? Stuff that you really wouldn't want in your water either. I don't use it at all. That's not an option on my schedule, but that's just our personal preference. Salt generator. When you're doing a salt generator, and I think you guys have used salt here before in the past. So the thing with salt is you have to build the generator big enough to get to this point because your output is only 2% versus 12%. Big difference. That's why a lot of people in the beginning failed with salt generators. It's still a matter of how many people are getting in the water. Forget about the body of water. It's whatever, how many gallons it is, that's only one factor. How many people are getting in there? What's the worst time of the year that you're going to run into problems that you need the chlorine the most? That's what's most important, not just the size of the body of water. And then you have to realize it's very weak, so you have to stack them. And then you have to put them in properly. Are you getting fresh water coming into it, or is it one feeding on the next one? Big difference in design makes all the difference in the world. Hydraulics are very important. Again, we get TDS and salt from that. Cal Hypo is probably the strongest chlorine next to gas chlorine. This is actually our choice. Byproduct is calcium. The only thing water ever wants is calcium. That's number one. So RO water. RO water is not good for you. The one thing that it should have at minimum is calcium, because when you don't have calcium in water, it will find it. And that takes it from your bones, your joints, and so forth. So if you drink RO water, try putting RO water in your swimming pool. You know what will happen? It'll eat your plaster, and your plaster will disintegrate. So never put soft water in a swimming pool because it doesn't have that much calcium or very little. It'll destroy the plaster because the water actually wants that calcium. So it will take it from wherever it needs to. But But that's always that's always a factor. As long as it's managed okay, you should be fine. Yes, sir.
For CalHypo, I guess the con would be calcium line around the pool a lot more often, or?
No. It doesn't give it up unless you got too much. So it's a balance factor. So it's a good question. If you saw calcium around your pool, you would have to have a ton of calcium in there. And what that would tell me is it's poorly managed water. So your water should start at about 200 to 250. And there's no reason you shouldn't be able to manage that, especially if you have like sand filters and so forth. You're backwashing, and every time you're backwashing and so forth, if you're watching your usage as far as how many people are coming in, how your system is running and so forth, and you're keeping it fairly clean, you shouldn't have to use a lot of calcium hypochlorite. Plus the fact, people say that. Good question is, they say, well, when you use CalHypo, your calcium goes up super fast, and then you're going to have all this calcium in the water. No, that's false. That's just them trying to sell you something else, and probably are trying to do that. That's why they're poo-pooing it and telling you it's bad stuff. But you would have to use a ton of CalHypo to get to that level. And that means that you're just not managing, you're not getting rid of water, you're not managing your TDS levels in there and so forth. Because 1,500, I would say, probably about 12 to 1,500 parts per million is what you'd have to have in there to see that water line. And that would also mean that your pH is not managed very well, because when your pH rises, everything comes out of solution. So a lot of times people have like cloudy water issues, so it'll look hazy and so forth. It's not. There's only two things that make your water cloudy, is the filtration and chemistry. And that's one common one, is the calcium. When your calcium gets too high, people are like throwing different clarifiers. It'll never do anything. You drop the pH, goes right back into solution, and it's clear again. And it's only because you have high calcium levels, but you're going to be in like 1,500 range. Yes, sir.
I don't know if you're going to mention the LSI, but I can teach him about the LSI later.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we talk very, very little about it, but yeah, good. So one of the things that we really dislike about chlorine and so forth, these are some things that are really not mentioned, but these are all the gases. These are just some of the gases that are formed from using chlorine in a body of water. So when you walk into a facility and you smell that chlorine, that's not chlorine you're smelling, that's chloramines you're smelling. Very, very bad. I think it should be illegal to bring your children into a swim school when you smell chloramines. I absolutely cringe when I walk in there. So I have to say I really dislike swimming pools because the regulations and so forth that they follow or don't follow, kids don't have a voice, unfortunately. You're the only voice they have. When you walk into those, it's a toxic environment, absolutely toxic. Shouldn't be allowed in there at all. So you're taking in that, a lot of swimmers and so forth over time, if you've noticed, they end up with swimmer's lung, they end up with skin issues, they end up with all these other issues and so forth, and they can't even use a swimming pool derived from that guy right there. All of that is derived from one thing, which is horrible. So it's one of the things I really, really dislike about using it. I know you sometimes have to use it in certain cases, but you don't have to swim in it, and you don't have to deal with that because there's ways of getting rid of that. And that's what we focus on. But anyways, when you get to these kind of pools and so forth, I mean, you can't even see the water. So how are you going to manage that? Chlorine cannot manage that. And they say you raise the chlorine level. No, wrong. You don't raise the chlorine level. It all goes back to the beginning. So if your filtration is right and your turnover rate is right, the water stays clean, and it allows the chlorine to do its job of disinfecting, not oxidizing. That's very important to understand that one piece, because that's a major failure in our industry. Major failure in our industry. And I'm going to show you some pictures, something that will actually show you why that is true. pH of chlorine. So here's the other thing. So gas chlorine is 0. So unfortunately, gas chlorine pushes your pH downwards instead of upwards. Liquid, very high pH. It can go up to as high as 14. So every time you feed, so it's just a factor, every time you feed, when you get a pool that looks like this, you got a lot of people and you're going to have more chlorine feeding. So every time it feeds, it's going to be kicking your pH up all the time. It's weak is number 2. So it's going to be using more of it, which you're going to be more of the pH control. So you're going to be feeding more acid in. And as you feed more acid and you got chlorine, then you got the other factor of adding in sodium bicarbonate because it's going to destroy your alkalinity as well. Okay? So it's just a vicious cycle in swimming pools, and it's constant. So very important. This is why I say it's really important to understand what you're feeding in, how often you're going to be feeding it, what other products are you going to use to bring it back to balance. Calcium hypochlorite, it's less than that, but it's also at 67 to 78%, so it's very strong. So I'm going to use less of it. I'm going to use less byproducts as far as like acid or anything else, CO2 to bring it down because of just the nature of the product itself. Does that make sense? Trichlor. I do not like trichlor or dichlor. They have what's called stabilizer in the water. Stabilizer is not good for the water. It's not good for you. It's not good for the wastewater management or anything like that. So as a matter of fact, if you've noticed in different cities throughout the country, they've actually banned backwashing into the sewer system because they don't want your pool water. Actually, California did that. And you're like, I thought about it. I'm like, well, that's really nice. You'll take my toilet water, but you won't take my pool water. And you had to go through and you had to RO your backyard pool. You had to have a company come in, RO the pool, and then you could get rid of it. But you had to bring the TDS levels down so they were safe enough to put in the sewer system. Make sense, right? Not? To me, red flag, right? It's like, so this is a lot of the reasons why I don't like the standard chemistry guideline that they give you. So these guys I never use, I never recommend them. They're not good for pretty much any body water in my eyes. Chlorine generators, you have a couple different types. I'm just showing you the different ones they have. You have inline generator. You have something like this guy here, water flows through it. You charge the body of water, so whatever pool you have, you bring it up to 3,000, 5,000 parts per million of salt, and then as it runs through there, it creates chlorine as it needs it based on your chemical controller. And then you have a brine tank generator. The salt is stored in the tank in the pump room, and as it needs chlorine, just water flows through there. It creates a salty solution. It flows through this guy. It creates chlorine for you, and then it feeds it back to the pool. So 2 different ways of creating chlorine. You have secondary disinfection systems. You have quite a bit to choose from. Again, people get confused with this, and it's easy because everybody's pushing one product or another, and they want to go this way, this way, this way. I'm going to give you an overall on every one so you can see what they all do, okay, as including ours as well. So, ozone. I love ozone. It's what we have in our outer atmosphere. It's what keeps us safe every single day. You hear people talk about high ozone advisory. That's industrial ozone. That's totally different from the fresh ozone that keeps us safe every day. i.e., industrial ozone is derived from, we have 80% nitrogen in the air that we breathe. We have other pollutants in that air. We have CO2, there's argon, there's other pollutants in there, carbon monoxide and so forth. When you make ozone using, I'm going to call it dirty air or ambient air, it does not create a pure ozone. Anybody ever heard of ozone IV injections and so forth? Have you guys heard of that at all? So they basically inject you with, or I should say, they take your blood out and they ozonate it and then they feed it back into you. So there's a lot of places out there, naturopaths and so forth, that do that, that clean your blood. They have to use pure ozone for that, 100%. If they don't, they create nitric acid, which is super bad for you. So there's a big difference between the 2 types of ozone that are produced on a daily basis around us. And you'll hear that a lot. But Ozone is one of the most powerful oxidizers and disinfectants on the planet. 20 to 3,000 times stronger than chlorine. At its lowest, it's 20 times stronger. Beautiful thing about this, it doesn't care what your pH is. Chlorine has to be at a pH of 7.5. Ozone doesn't care what it's at. It's just as powerful. 10,000 times more effective at killing microorganisms than chlorine, provides continuous oxidation and disinfection 24/7. So when you put these systems on, they're continuously just feeding and cleaning the water. The thing that I didn't like about these on a standard ozone system was they're so powerful, it's like, well, I can't clean enough water fast enough. So in a standard system, what they would do is they would take a side stream. So in your pump room, they'd pull off the main line, they'd set up the ozone system, and then it would come back and it would feed back in the line. But they would only take 20% of the flow to run through there, and they run it through contact tanks. The bubbles and stuff would stay in those tanks, and then they would off-gas whatever they didn't use. If you look back again at our turnover rate, only 62% of that water is being cleaned. Well, now I'm taking 20% of that 60%, right? So in an 8-hour time period, I'll use a standard, only 12% of my water was actually being touched by the best disinfectant that I could find. I'm like, well, that's terrible. Why can't I do 100% of it so that if I change my turnover rate to 2 hours, 1 hour, 4 hours, whatever it is, I can get 100% of my water hitting this, which means I would cut back more on the chlorine usage that I have because it's so powerful. And it's a disinfectant and oxidizer, okay? So it increases my ORP levels. And everybody familiar with ORP or no? ORP is a measurement, it's called oxidation disinfection potential. And what it does is it measures the oxidizing power of the water. So whatever disinfectant or sanitizers that you put in there, the higher this number is, the stronger the water's ability is at destroying any type of microorganisms or anything else that comes into that body of water. You want to have it at a minimum of like 650. When you add ozone to the water, these levels get so high, you cannot manage a pool with ozone without a ppm probe. And the reason why I say that is because commercially you're required to have 1 part per million of chlorine in your water. If you don't have that in there, they'll write you up. It doesn't matter how clean your water is, how sanitized, how high the ORP number is. They want to see a number 1, which means nothing. It's just a political thing, and we'll talk about that if we have time. But your ORP levels are the same thing they use for drinking water, quality, and so forth. They're looking at that. They want to see what that level is. The 1 part per million of chlorine means nothing because it can never reach these type of ORP levels. It will never reach that. And that's why you have to have a ppm probe. So it just says 1, and your ORP will be 850, 900, something like that. But chlorine will never hit that number at 1 part, 2 parts, 3 parts. It'll never see that number. It's used as a coagulant to remove metals from drinking water. So we make a lot of different systems and so forth. And when we do this, we're always looking at what water is coming in first. So we do these systems for different hot springs around the country, and we manage the water first. So we test the water that's coming out of the ground. We see what that is, and then we see where they need to go. We don't want to remove anything good from the water because we want that to actually carry on to the members and so forth that are using that facility. So we want to remove anything that's going to be toxic or that's too high for the members that are using those types of facilities. This is the same way they use for all of your drinking water and so forth. They use ozone on the front side of filtration before your filtration to be able to remove that. When we do make ozone, we only make pure ozone by using oxygen. So we use oxygen concentrators when we produce that. And then, of course, again, faster turnover rate, the greater the benefits. And it provides a low residual time. So standard, and I'm going to show you the difference between standard and the technologies that we've developed over the years. Standard is about 6 minutes. Ours is about 57 minutes. So benefits using standard AOP. Anybody ever heard of AOP? I know this is kind of a new thing that's on the market. People, well, for the last few years. And they talk a lot about it, but you know, there's pros and cons to it. And it's understanding the system again, okay? So I'm going to explain this to you so you understand it. When you're using AOP, they feed through what's called a venturi. So again, they take a side stream of what's in the pump room, and they have a venturi that creates vacuum, and it draws in a gas into the line. This is your feed point. This is your sanitation point. So in the next 12 hours or the next 8 hours, only the water that passes through that line is sanitized. That's it. If you look up the definition of a hydroxyl radical is what these things produce, they live for fractions of a second. So they do not stay in the water. There is no residual in there. It will drop your ORP levels because it destroys the ozone or whatever other process that they're going through. So unfortunately, they do a great job when you're doing like drinking water and so forth, but for a swimming pool, the three things I need to meet is I need to have oxidation, which it has. I have disinfection, it has. 3, it doesn't provide any residual. And 4, it actually only cleans a very small part of the water as it's coming through the system. It's not cleaning all of the water. I want all of my water clean, not just a part of it. I want everything clean. So it is one of the most powerful natural disinfectant oxidizers available, provides another level of sanitation and oxidation. It's indiscriminate at killing organisms. It kills everything, absolutely everything. Provides oxidation, disinfection 24/7, again, only on that small portion that you're feeding. It normally uses ambient air, which I don't like. AOP method destroys pathogens, Giardia, Tryptosporidium, which chlorine doesn't. Not even UV destroys crypto. This is the number one guy that we're trying to stay away from right here, okay? UV actually sterilizes it, very much alive, but it doesn't kill it, okay? This and ozone kill it. It's done, okay? Faster turnover rates, again, greater benefits, decreases your ORP level, which is normal, and it provides no residual. Benefits using UV. So I'll say that I was duped into this many years ago. They would say, oh, they sell you all the benefits. Yeah, you're going to save money. It's the greatest thing, blah, blah, blah. But it all goes back to in the beginning. When does your water actually see the UV system? Only when it goes in the pump room, okay? It's a light. Cryptosporidium is my number one problem in my pool, okay? How long is it going to take to get there? Quite some time, maybe not today, maybe the next the next turnover rate. I don't know, it's going to be a long time. But nonetheless, it also is reliant on, it doesn't oxidize any contaminants, number 2, okay? It's like a sanitizer, mild sanitizer. It's reliant on your water clarity. So if you have dirty water, and this is one of the frustrating things, towards the end of the day, you got a lot of people getting into your pool, and the pool gets cloudy. This is when you need it most, and this is when it doesn't work as much, because it needs to have water clarity in order for it to perform properly. So again, everything goes back to the beginning, what I was saying. If you have clean water and you designed your system properly in the beginning, it's going to work great. If you didn't, it's not going to work that great, and it's going to actually cost you more money, because these are not easy or are not cheap to manage either. UV intensity increases with cloudy water because it needs more power. It decreases with clear water. It doesn't need as much power to penetrate through there. Becomes AOP when you're actually feeding in on the inlet side. So it actually, this treats 100% of the water if it's designed properly, if I'm putting ozone and so forth prior to this. But also what type of ozone am I feeding to this as well makes all the difference. I can't have big bubbles going back to the pool because that's not good. Increase in disinfection capabilities exponentially completely reduces. We have a couple of hospitals. They use a bucket of chlorine in like a 25,000 gallon pool, and they might use that every 3 months in the hospital. So they hardly use anything at all to operate those facilities. The UFBs present in the water increase the UV transmittance, and that's ultrafine bubbles. So this is our system here, which is called the AquaGen or AquaFusion. AquaGen utilizes oxygen and ozone in the diffusing process. It actually diffuses these bubbles into the water, and they stay in the water for literally, when we use them on lakes and so forth, they stay in there for weeks at a time. That's the beautiful part about them. But it's a 1,000,000,000 to 1 difference from standard bubbles, and I'm going to show you that here in a second. It provides another level of residual in my water. So rather than just having the standard chlorine in there, because typically that's all you normally have, I also have all this oxygen in the water. And if I'm using ozone, I got a ton of ozone in the water as well, which helps me raise my ORP levels, which I need in there. It's tested by the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. Ozone is 100% efficient at UFB level, which is great. Provides similar benefits to a hyperbaric oxygen chamber. So the health side of this thing is typically what we focus on. I could talk to you all day about those. It's just off the charts. Huge benefits, especially when it comes to comparison to a hyperbaric oxygen chamber. Awesome, really, really awesome. So this is the biggest difference here. So this is the smallest bubble created from a Venturi system, which is about a 10 micron bubble. We create 1 billion ultrafine that fit inside of that one smallest bubble that used to be on an old system. So, and this is the reason, these bubbles are negatively charged, so they stay in solution for long periods of time. So one of the beautiful things about these bubbles, they have numerous different characteristics. I'm going to focus on 3 of them for you. One is they stay in solution for long periods of time. 2 is they don't explode, they implode on themselves. Okay, so they stay in solution for long periods of time. They can move throughout the body of water just like any other particle in there. They improve the clarity of the water. The ozone, when it goes in, it can last as long as 57 minutes. So now I have my residual that I wanted. When the ozone is done, they actually implode and they create what they call hydroxyl radicals. So rather than waiting for this to happen in my pump room, my swimming pool now becomes a nuclear power plant of destroying microorganisms that are harmful to us. So at the end of the day, I like to look at it like that. I won. This is what we were trying to accomplish for many years, is making it a lot safer place for the little guys and so forth in need where you can't see a lot of this stuff. Now I don't have to worry about it as much. I've got 8 grandchildren, believe it or not, and they can't swim in a normal body of water because the chlorine really bothers them and they start breaking out in like hives and so forth, rashes, super bad. So I can't even take them to a normal swimming pool at all. But they can get in this water no problem, which is great. So nonetheless, 3 levels, that's the best thing. So technically, why do we get water that's so clear? That's actually 12 feet deep. That's a 120,000 gallon swimming pool. I could only do this type of water quality on a backyard pool. Why? Politics. There isn't a single drop of chlorine in that water. It hasn't been in there for years, and that's what I get for water quality. So increased water clarity, you get a softer feel of the water. So a lot of people that like to have that soft water feel like salt water, that's what you get. Greatly improved indoor air quality because I'm not producing the chloramines like you normally used to. Faster breakdown of oils and lotions and so forth. And the nice part about that is the oxygen itself, because it's negatively charged, all your different organics and so forth are positively charged. It attracts those and it actually skims them off the surface of the pool. That's why I keep my water clarity so nice. Lower TDS levels. I'm not having to add other chemicals to the water because it's doing a lot of the heavy lifting that I need done. Increased bather comfort for sensitive users. Again, I've had numerous people in there, people that normally can't get into swimming pools. If you manage your water and you only have 1 part per million in there, you can have a plethora of different people come in that wouldn't normally be able to get in that water. And trust me, we put our attorney in the pool, so it worked. Yes, sir.
So the oxygen O2 is negatively charged,
Yes.
and the O3 is positive.
No, all of those bubbles, everything that we produce is negatively charged.
What?
The dirt, the debris, and everything that's coming in is positive. It's tracking all of that. So those bubbles, they actually come together and they lift all that stuff out of there. That's why I'm able to keep my water super clean. So it's kind of a couple different, it's like scrubbing the water for, say, 24/7. So any dirt and any organics and things that are coming in there, they're constantly being pulled out, and that's where you get your water clarity from. Cleaner air for the indoor facilities, healthier water for backwashing and sewer systems. First part of the sewer systems is aeration. They have a tremendous hard time of creating oxygen and keeping it in solution. They use big aeration machines. We've done this for some other, like Intel and so forth, some systems in there. They had a 80% savings on their electric for those aeration systems for the water they use for their semiconductors and so forth. So it does a huge heavy lifting for the sewer systems. Vegetation, we use it for I should show you some pictures of that. It's really kind of cool. You take a normal lemon, just like this, and it's like this from backwash water from the swimming pool. It's incredible. And then, of course, we use it for lakes and fish and aquatic life as well. Benefits that we see, we also make our own tubs. And this kind of is a long story, but I'll make it quick and short, is both my parents, one of them had Parkinson's, my father had heart disease, and we used to get in the spa, and it was really, really good for his heart, and it was great for my mom that had Parkinson's. Over time, it was very difficult for them to get into the spa, so I designed a tub that was low enough where they could just sit on it and slide in. They had since passed, but nonetheless, that was my goal, is to get the system small enough so people in need could actually use it. So we designed this. But these are just some of the things, anecdotally and so forth, that we've been looking at, that it helps with. It helps detox the body because the oxygen actually can get into the bloodstream, which is awesome. It reduces inflammation and swelling at numerous levels and so forth. That's the other beautiful thing. Better cardiovascular health and circulation, cognitive function, memory support. The oxygen, actually, you get more oxygen to the brain. Strengthening of immune system. It promotes healing. Swim school teacher from it's been longer than that, 12, 13 years ago when we put our first system on a swim school. The director of the swim school, she had scars on her knee from like 9th grade surgery, and they were gone. I had no idea I was going to do anything like that. I'm like, oh my gosh. She's like, yeah, they're gone. And she was excited about it. But nonetheless, that's been something that's been just ongoing through the years. So more and more people realize that it does that. Increases oxygen in the body, improves metabolism at a cellular level, better transportation of natural minerals throughout the body. I got numerous stories I can tell you about over at the hot springs, different hot springs. We actually have it at the hot springs here, Castle Hot Springs here in Arizona, over there. But it's amazing what it does for those people that get in those. This is on one of the swim schools. We got to design this facility here. They have a 55,000 gallon pool, and it's just strictly so you can understand the numbers and so forth of why we do stuff. 600 gallons a minute. It has a 1 hour turnover rate, and these are what we call the contact tanks and so forth. So I get 100% touching our ozone in all of these contact tanks before it goes back. So not a drop of water misses the ozone before it goes back to the body of water. So we get super water clarity in there, fast turnover rates, very little chlorine usage and so forth, very little chemical usage, no chloramines in the room, you don't smell anything in there. And it's all based on turnover rate and cleaning and scrubbing that water prior to going back. Just some pictures to show you. These are no chlorine in either one of these. It's California. These are spas. Again, that's another one. That's a 12-foot deep pool there. This is a spa there. That's 12-foot deep. This is the city of Scottsdale. City of Scottsdale utilizes all of our systems on all of their pools. That's their recreation pool. This is one of the Marriott Mayo Clinic. That's City of Scottsdale again. And then these are some spas we did. These are also chlorine free. But you can see the water clarity. It's like it's not even there. It's absolutely amazing. Yes, sir.
But the ones in Scottsdale need one part.
You have to. Yeah, unfortunately. Yeah, good question. Any questions?